I'd like to turn it over to our president, Dr. Lamont Repollet, to say a few words. Dr. Repollet.
Good morning and welcome to Kean University. I am Dr. Lamont Repollet, president of Kean University. I am genuinely excited to be here today to kick off the celebration of World Autism Awareness Month here at Kean with this incredible panel made up of the state senate president, educators, and parent advocates. We will hear about their experiences with the educational system and the ideas on what needs to be done to support autistic children and adults in our communities. Today, we celebrate the 1 in 54 children around the country who live with autism, including many of our students and children, siblings, and friends. We celebrate their unique qualities and the ways in which they enrich our lives and communities. Most importantly, today and every day, we must highlight the need to support people with autism so they can lead full and meaningful lives. With appropriate accommodations and open-mindedness, people with autism can enjoy equal opportunity and fully and effectively participate in society. Today, we will explore how each of us can contribute to greater understanding and improved outcomes for people with autism. As a lifelong educator, I am committed to advocating for all students and giving every student, each with their own unique abilities, opportunities to grow and flourish. It is a part of who I am. But also, I have a personal reason to care deeply about all students with autism and other challenges. My 2 nieces, whom I love with all my heart, have autism. I know the challenges those 2 beautiful little girls have overcome. I know that there is more in their future. I know too that with the help and support of their parents, their teachers, peers, therapists, and many others, they will live a full life. I applaud my sisters' commitment and dedication to ensure that they live a full and healthy life. Those 2 little girls will always have me as their uncle to be an advocate and a protector. I am there for them now, and I will always be there for them. We're all called as individuals to see each other, not by what we cannot do, but by who we are and what we can achieve. Once we put that concept into action in our lives, obstacles disappear and possibilities open up. What I'm saying is that all of the challenges we face are not easy, but they help make us who we are. They make us different, not less. The journey to success is an individual one, but we will all need someone to learn on and follow our own path. Success means different things to different people. For autistic students, success could mean getting good grades, making friends, completing a science project, or something else. It could also mean reaching the highest heights in any field. Take Dr. Temple Grandin, for example. She is a scientist, professor, activist, and autism spokesperson. She also has autism. Dr. Grandin invented a humane way to herd livestock in stockyards and has authored more than 60 scientific papers on animal behavior, as well as books on living and learning with autism. She's just one of the famous people with autism, people who have defined themselves through their hard work, individuality, and achievements. She enlightened us when she once said, kids have to be exposed to different things in order to develop. A child's not going to find out he likes to play an musical instrument if you never expose him to it. There are others like Dr. Grandin. I can share many more examples of famous people on the autism spectrum. The autism community is wide and diverse. Yet I want you to hear from our local community. Those are the very people here on this stage with me today. And that community is strong. All of us need to be strong in support of it, using our influences, our voices, and our caring hearts to help empower the lives of people with autism and their families. At Kean University, we know there is beauty and strength in diversity. and we believe that everyone has the right to be treated with respect. We are creating connections across the continuum, from early childhood to undergraduate, to promote a seamless experience for students with autism. From establishing a new pre-K autism classroom at Keynes Child Care and Development Center, to joining forces with industry partners to enhance workforce development for high school students on the spectrum. The university is prioritizing students with autism every step of the way as we build a comprehensive pre-K to 12 bachelor pipeline. People with autism are making contributions to our schools, families, and communities across every job. Their needs, concerns, and experiences are valuable and enrich us all. They help us to see things differently and question our perceptions. Society will be a better place for all of us if we all learn to accept, appreciate, and accommodate one another's needs in a way that is inclusive and equitable for all. Because people with autism learn differently does not mean they don't learn. Because they think differently does not mean they don't think. On the contrary, their minds are teaching us to learn and think differently, and that's neurodiversity. Let's all continue to work on that together. Before I turn the program back over, I want you again to thank our distinguished panelists and give a very special thanks to our Senate President, Steve Sweeney, a good friend, a passionate advocate for our beloved autism community, who sponsored a resolution in 2015 ensuring that New Jersey celebrates World Autism Day every year on April 2nd. Senator, thank you for joining us virtually today. We know how busy your schedule is, especially these days during the state budget season, and we thank you for taking the time to be with us. I just wish you could be here this evening to see how lit our Union campus is, as young people would say. We have our lit campus with the color blue to celebrate and honor the magnificent minds of our autism community. Now I'm pleased to turn it back over to our moderator, Kate Gallagher, my Deputy Chief of Staff, to begin our panel. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Repalet. It is now my pleasure to introduce our distinguished panelists. We will start with our Senate President, Steve Sweeney. Senator Sweeney represents New Jersey's 3rd legislative district. He's been a senator since 2002, Senate President since 2010, and he previously was the Democratic Majority Leader and Conference Chair. He currently chairs the Select Committee on New Jersey Transit and co-chairs the Select Commission on Emergency COVID-19 Borrowing. He is the Vice President of the International Association of Ironworkers and a longtime advocate for people with disabilities. Senator Sweeney, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Next, we'll move to the Dean of our College of Education, Barbara Reiner. Dr. Reiner took the helm of as Dean of Keynes College of Education in December of 2019, just a few months before the COVID-19 crisis descended upon us. She holds a bachelor's and master's degrees in education from the University of Central Florida and a PhD in mathematics education from the University of Georgia. With 29 years in education, Dean Reiner started her career as an elementary school teacher focused on mathematics, and since then has taught at all levels from elementary to post-secondary. She was the chair of the Department of Teaching and Learning at the Florida Atlantic University's College of Education before coming to join us at Kean. And we welcome you today, Dr. Reiner, to the stage. Thank you. Thank you so much. Next, we have Ashley Tafuga. Ashley is an undergraduate student at Kean studying marketing with a minor in communications. She is a member of the President's Advisory Council, which is comprised of student leaders from across campus. She's a Navy veteran, and most importantly, she's a mom to 4 children. Ashley is engaged in research on autism here at Kean, and her research is focused on sensory processing and neurodiversity. The subject is near and dear to her heart, as Ashley is a mom to 2 children with autism. In fact, Ashley left corporate America to be more active in her children's therapies and to advocate for them as part of a variety of groups for parents of children with autism. Ashley, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And finally, we have Mr. Kenneth Green. Ken is an attorney who earned bachelor's and master's degrees from Rutgers before getting his law degree from the University of Pennsylvania Law School. He currently serves as the Associate Vice President for Employee Relations here at Kean, and in that capacity, he oversees our offices of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Affirmative Action, and Title IX. Before arriving at Kean, Ken was the Director of Employee Relations at the New Jersey Department of Corrections, and he is also the dad to a son with autism. So he's here today to shed light on his experience advocating for his son, little Ken. Welcome.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'll pose our first question to Senator Sweeney. Senator, as a legislator, you have the opportunity to shape policy to make a critical difference for people with autism, and you've sponsored quite a bit of legislation to benefit individuals with disabilities. What legislation are you most proud of?
We created a registry to make sure people didn't abuse people with disabilities. Doing away with the word retardation, doing away with that to address people as intellectually disabled or developmentally disabled. There was actually discrimination against people that were going to get organ transplants because they had disabilities, which is wild to think that a person with a disability's life is not as valuable. So we actually had to do legislation to ensure that people cannot keep a person from a disability from getting a transplant because they have a disability. There's just a ton of things that we've worked on and we're going to continue to work on. And I want to acknowledge Keynes' efforts in this, and to your president's words that ring so true, that people with disabilities have the ability. We just have to look beyond the disability and find that person and give that person a chance. So I am thrilled to participate with this. There's a lot of legislation we've done, a lot more we need to do. But this type of dialogue, to recognize that people with disabilities have just as much value as anyone else. So look beyond that disability. One of the big things, one of the latest things we did with paratransit. Transportation is critically important for people with disabilities to get employment. And Senator Weinberg and I just recently did a bill that makes paratransit work better for people with disabilities because it wasn't working well. So again, I'm thrilled to participate. Speaks volumes about your president, who I'm proud of to call a friend, that focuses. We all know someone with autism. When I ran a county government, I built a school just for autistic children. Special lighting, ventilation, colors, textures, maximize people with autism's opportunities to learn. So again, having this discussion is so critically important to ensure that our disabled community has a right to an education and then to employment, gainful employment. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of your important work, and it's an honor to have you here with us today, virtually. So we'll move next to Dean Reiner. Dean Reiner, the focus of today's discussion is awareness to action. Awareness is an important and critical first step, but what are some important ways that educators can take action to help students with autism feel a sense of belonging at school?
Well, when I think about educators, I think about educators and administrators. And what we really have to do is create communities, school communities, learning communities, where all individuals are welcome, safe, and valued. The interesting thing about, we talk about individuals with disabilities, but really they're just individuals with differing abilities. Their abilities may severely limit their ability to function, or they may perform very high in some areas and struggle in other areas. And so it is incumbent upon us to be able to recognize their strengths, be able to support them to learn to the best of their ability, and also mitigate areas where it might impede their success. So it's really creating that safety and ability to allow them to function alongside their peers to the best possible that they can.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Ashley, you have joked that everyone wants to study your family. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, so I have 4 children, like you said, and 2 are boys, 2 are girls. My 2 older children have the same father, and my 2 younger children have the same father. But one of the girls has autism, and one of the boys has autism. So they're so interested in looking at the genetics behind it because, an autism diagnosis is a variable of genetic combinations mixed with environmental impact at early brain development. So they're like, you're one of the perfect case scenarios where, I'm the only connection between the two of them. So they really, want to study and try and see if they can find some kind of genetic component tied to autism.
Must be exciting to be part of such important research.
It is. You're kind of sitting there waiting for something to come out. Like, did they figure out something? Did they figure out something? So
Absolutely.
I'm eager.
Thank you. Ken, with a master's degree in public administration and a law degree, you are a trained advocate with a deep understanding of how to navigate social systems. How does your education, your training, and your experience help you to advocate for little Ken?
To be quite honest, it really doesn't. When you get a diagnosis and you learn about having a child with autism, it's a brand new world. You don't know anything. You don't know where to go. You don't know who to talk to. And you don't really understand what it means to have a spectrum. Can my kid arc up to 90%? Is he going to be 50%? Can he get a job? Do I have to do something today to make sure he's okay tomorrow? Do I have to quit my job? Do I have to change the familial relationship? So that training does absolutely zero, and it's probably a very frightening thing. As a lawyer, you know your case, you know what you're going to argue, you understand it. When you're representing your own son, for me, my namesake, having the responsibility of trying to advocate, it's just very difficult. I'll add that as a member of a diverse background, every meeting I've had thus far, I've never seen a person of diversity in that discussion. So overlaid on the complexity and fear of trying to get this one right, it's a very foreign environment every time you deal with it, which just makes it even more difficult.
Absolutely. What a complicated scenario. And so interesting to hear you say that in spite of all that training, the personal challenge can sort of, topple that over, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, you talked about equity in action, or you talking about school. So I'm going to give an example. My niece Leah, was nonverbal at the time, and this is from probably 0 to maybe 4 or 5. However, when she started attending school, just the light bulb, and you have trained individuals who understand the complexity of the spectrum, right? I really understand how to dig deep and how to educate. And I think that at Kean University, under your leadership, Dean Reiner, I'm looking forward to exploring that, to make sure we create more teachers prepared to enter that workforce, because we understand that's a need. And I had a conversation with my niece about a month ago, and she was explaining a movie she watched on television. She's now around 12, 13. I was blown away because I thought I was talking to someone else. And I said, "Is this Leah?" She's like, "It's me, Uncle Ma." I said, "Oh, wow." I was like, and it just made you think that, Senator President Sweeney said, and what you talked about, Dean Reiner, is that there's talent, there's intelligence there, but you have to have the patience to see beyond those impediments and those challenges, because it's really the light bulb moment for them. When they put technology in their hand, my other niece, she's nonverbal, but she's a whiz with the technology. And it makes you appreciate that. And when you see it, and it's really difficult for people who haven't been in that space, as you said, around that, because it's new, right? We're used to, putting a square peg in a square peg, right? However, it's challenging when you have the square peg putting in a round hole, right? And it's challenging because the adults are frustrated. The people who have to deal with the students on the spectrum, the frustration lies with us. But I think at Kean University, as we start to really look at this space from a holistic standpoint, we're going to start to create a workforce that's looking beyond those challenges. So I'm looking forward. We talk about equity. I always talk about equity in action. Action. I'm a big person into those verbs, right? Action. What can we do? So this opportunity today for me is very special. I pay homage to my niece and all the other individuals on the spectrum, and it's nice to be able to have some conversation.
Absolutely. I think sometimes we're looking for ways to fit that round peg through that square hole, right? Instead, we want to build a square hole, right?
Yes.
We want to expand our thinking.
Or expand that circle.
Absolutely.
So that square can fit in there.
Yep.
And I think that sometimes we don't think about that. And that's that fixed mindset versus that growth mindset. Because the growth mindset says, we're going to just fix mindset. We're just going to jam this square into that circle. And you understand you do that, the fringe is always on the outside. But a growth mindset, let's expand the circle so it goes a lot easier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Senator, we're going to turn back to you with the next question. Late in 2020, you launched a historic bipartisan disability caucus that includes nearly 30 legislators. Where do you see that work heading, and how might people with autism benefit from it?
Can you
I think
somebody
you're
have mic
muted,
him, please?
Senator.
Okay, I just wanted to say something to Ken at first. I had that same experience, Ken, when my daughter was born. I was born into a whole new world and had no idea it existed. You know, we lived in parallel universe, basically. But that's why I got involved in politics. That was my motivation. And my life's work is in this field. We created this disability caucus for one reason and one reason only. We talk a lot, but we don't do a lot. We need to get focused, like, and as a group of people that are involved, to find opportunities for people with disabilities to have meaningful employment. And at Lamont, Mr. President, I'm thrilled that you said, even at Kean, you're going to look at employing people with disabilities, because guess what? Government stinks when it comes to hiring people with disabilities, period. So the focus is to address the issues that are at hand right now. Again, it's employment, it's housing, it's transportation. It's no different than any other group, but it normally doesn't get the kind of focus that we're putting on it, and that I'm leveraging with my office as a Senate president. Gives me the ability to ensure that we highlight areas in this disabled community to ensure, again, that we look beyond that disability and people are living full, complete lives. Might not be the same as mine and yours, but guess what? It's a full and complete life to my daughter. My daughter works at a daycare center. She is proud of employment, that she's employed. In fact, when she's not feeling well, you got to hold her back from going to work. So again, this is create a focus on the needs, to find the roadblocks, to get over the roadblocks and over the hurdles, to ensure that people with disabilities get the opportunities they want. And I have 30 members of this caucus. It's bipartisan, which I think disability issues are a bipartisan issue. And I just look forward to a situation where we start seeing the fruits of our work, where we actually start taking these barriers down and giving people opportunities with employment.
Absolutely. Senator, I was fortunate to attend a roundtable discussion you hosted. I think it was back in January
Yes.
on workforce development for adults with disabilities. And I remember you talked about the minimum wage legislation passed in New Jersey that included $10 million to incentivize employers to retain disabled individuals. So how does that work in terms of the employer side of enticing them to?
Well, when we raised the minimum wage, again, the concern was that if there was job loss, they would turn to the disabled workers first. So we wanted to make sure we incentivized employers not to reduce employment for the disabled. We hate to see reduced employment for anyone, but the disabled community, it's that much even harder to find employment. So we put $10 million aside for businesses that their credits they can gain by employing the disabled. And we'll probably have to increase that as minimum wage goes up. And I'm very happy to do what we need to do to ensure people with disabilities maintain their ability to be in the society. Sorry. So it's really to protect people with disabilities from losing employment.
That's incredible.
awesome.
Yeah. Dean Reiner, let's shift to teacher preparation. Kean is the largest producer of pre-K to 12 teachers in New Jersey, and autism rates in New Jersey are notably high. We heard earlier that 1 in 54 children nationally are diagnosed with autism. In New Jersey, it's 1 in 32. So how does our College of Education prepare novice teachers to support students with autism in their future classrooms?
Well, I have to say that this is one of the areas that, I think New Jersey actually leads the nation in identifying children with autism. And I really believe that speaks more to our ability to diagnose than it really does to the rate of children with autism here. The other thing it's important to recognize that 1 in 32 is also reflective of 1 in 20 boys with autism. That means that in every 2 classrooms, it is very likely that there is at least one child with autism who has been diagnosed or not diagnosed. So what are we doing? We help students identify diverse learning abilities and then strategies to help students perform to the best of their ability, to meet students where they are, to help them to achieve success, and then adapt teaching so that those students can be successful. Many of our majors have teachers of students with disabilities endorsement when they graduate, our early childhood, our elementary, many of our K-12 students. And so as part of that, they have experiences, clinical experiences in classrooms where there are inclusion environments, and then also special strategies, strategy focused classes where they really learn to adapt instruction. Because after all, it is being able to present instruction in a way that will reach the students to help them achieve success, and then also mitigate where they might be having.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
Yeah, so as a commissioner, I went on a tour with Senate President Sweeney, and the ideas that we're taking away from the visit was the fact that he had students of disabled students, had them working in different jobs in the municipality, within the government. However, what I enjoyed was the fact that he built a campus. Remember the campus? So President Sweeney built a campus where you now can teach. They go to the hospital, and the doctors are trained to work with students of autism, making sure they understand that, the police force. So I think as we start to look at this, I will send my team down there again, Senate President Sweeney, to really look at that model, because I thought that was an amazing model, how you created this ecosystem that everyone was trained and aware to be able to identify, not just identify, be able to work with those students, and whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in the workforce, or whether it's in them just doing research. So I truly want to create that at Kean University, because I think that was a model. So we'll be down there to really look at what's going on down there with what you're doing with work at Rowan and those communities. I think, because I thought it was amazing for us to see that. And we're going to try to replicate that up here, especially the workforce development piece.
Well, and one of the things I wanted to add to that was that, I've always said that equal is not equitable. And if we teach our teachers to teach all children equally, that means they're all getting the same type of instruction.
Mm-hmm.
What we need to focus on instead is equitable instruction, so that all children will learn and receive the services that is best for them.
Ashley.
Also, basically, to speak on all the points you all made, it's the lack of understanding that causes that bias in the workforce. It's the lack of understanding that causes that disconnect in the classroom. And my neurodiversity research was actually on neurodiversity training, and all about how training others without autism to interact and to recognize and to understand someone who does have autism, and understand that they can help, not hurt, to actually recognize and be able to say, oh, maybe I can redirect them. Oh, they're having a hard time. Oh, maybe they need a minute to themselves. And it's that uncertainty of everyone else who does not have an autistic person or know someone with autism in their lives that causes them to be weary of it and kind of stay away. I know many people who feel like their child has been basically treated as if they were contagious, because of the fact that it's just a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge around it. So if we teach others versus trying to get that square peg in the round hole, it makes it a better community altogether. And it's really great to hear Kean is really pushing for that and really trying to do that. And I'm excited to be a part of that. Yeah, it's definitely, companies don't realize the benefit. The assumption is that it's more difficult to accommodate when actually the accommodations are usually trivial. It's very little that needs to be done to accommodate people with neurodiverse backgrounds, and getting companies to understand that and doing that training and getting them to realize, you know, you have an untapped pool of knowledge in these children and these adults. They see things and process things so differently that when I'm struggling with something, even my college stuff, I go to my son, he's 13, and I say, this is making no sense to me. He's so literal, he can read something as it is and just put it in layman's terms. And I'm like, that makes so much more sense than the way, you know, a teacher might have been trying to dumb it down. But with that, it's literal. It's like, oh, they mean this. You speak to them literally, they understand literally, and it's very interesting, and it's a learning experience for everyone to just.
Well, Senate President Sweeney, we have someone that can go and speak to your caucus, because I think she just nailed it. And I will definitely bring her with us when we go to visit the school, because what you just said was just spot on. So thank you.
And Ashley, we heard you say neurodiversity. So we heard that term often, I think. How does the language that we use shape the way that we think and feel about folks with autism and other challenges?
Okay, I know I shared the story with you before. I was listening to the radio and they were talking about autism awareness and everything, and I was glad, you know, they were having the discussion, but they kept referring to it as a problem. The problem of autism, the problem we face with dealing with autism. Autism, I always say to everyone, autism is not a problem, it's a lifestyle. When you adapt, when you get into it, it alters your entire life. And it's not just on the, oh, what am I gonna do? You know, the difficulties and the worry you have when you first hear it, it completely alters how you live. My daughter is 5 years old and my autistic daughter is 4 years old. To watch my 5-year-old pick up on what we've been taught in my daughter's therapy sessions and how we've been taught to interact with her, and take it upon herself to jump in when her younger sister is having a moment, to jump in when her younger sister needs to be redirected. It gives me hope and faith that we can train other people to be that person to jump in and help, to, you know, just build a better society in general, and just go from there and be amazing.
Absolutely. Ken, we'll shift to you for a moment. Advocating for your son's education can be complicated enough when there's agreement within the family as to what to advocate for, but I imagine that's not necessarily always the case. So how does that play out in the household?
Well, as a lawyer, everybody agrees with me, so it's never really a problem. I think it's a big challenge, because when you have people that spend a lot of time and invest in trying to find out what's best for your son, you can come to different perspectives. Sure. And you can have situations, and the one that comes to mind was my son was having difficulty tying his shoe. And I knew that he could do, I believed he could do it. I believed it was something that could be done. And his mom said, no, he's not getting it. He doesn't understand. It's never going to happen. And that created one of those moments where you go to the furthest part of the house from each other for the longest time possible. And it makes it very challenging. And I think that she spoke well on creating society, making sure everybody else understands, teaching parents, providing the go-to, the dummies manual for how to operate, how to work with each other, how to work with the child, what strategies exist, when you should know certain things and so forth, would be very helpful, versus you and your significant other just duking it out, both of you with great intentions, trying to do the best you can with your child, and not necessarily seeing eye to eye, and no one really knowing what the right answer is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I had a similar experience. You know, my daughter was only 2 when I got her diagnosed. And there's a lot of, you know, division at that point, you know, between she's just a child and, you know, that's what children do. And maybe you should get her tested. So it came to a point where I literally had to quit my job to be there with my daughter, to make sure the practices she was getting in therapy was taking place in the home, because, you know, others may not have felt it was necessary, you know. Yeah. And in doing that, that's where that spark launched, and I learned so much, and realizing that that training is invaluable. I appreciate all of the therapists out there, the occupational therapists, the speech therapists. You guys are amazing. Just that having that support and someone willing to listen, because they're willing to tell you. If you ask them, they will help you. They will tell you. They will teach you what they know. And having that teacher in my household and teaching me how to be a mother to a child with autism was invaluable. And it definitely helped bridge that gap between me and others around us who didn't believe that it was necessary. And to see them see it working and see them see the change made a complete 180. They did a complete 180, and now they're all for it. They're all about it. So it's just about diving in, getting involved, being there, witnessing it, and not being scared of it.
A lot of advocacy work as a parent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Senator Sweeney, I think you recently sponsored a bill that may equip parents with a new tool to advocate. And the bill requires local boards of education to provide special education and related services over the next few years to students who may exceed the age of eligibility. Compensatory services, including transition services, have been a hot topic throughout the pandemic. How would this bill, what would this bill do for students with special education students?
Somebody.
Thank you, maybe.
Yeah, they mute me at times. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Several governors would love to have that button with me. But really what it does is it gives parents to think their children have lost some ground, an opportunity to gain ground, you pick up that ground, because kids with disabilities they can lose, they can step back if they're not worked with. That's why, like with the president said, when you come down, we have a program that takes kids from 21 to 25, so that, you know, that they're adults first. Let me say, right, they're not kids, they're adults, but it's life skill, job skill, intensive training, because the goal is to ensure that when a person with the disability is done with the formal education, that they have a real opportunity at employment. So that was the focus of the bill. You know, I think a lot of kids, disabled and not disabled kids, have lost a lot over this pandemic, and we're going to have to figure out how we help them catch up. But this one specifically focuses on children with disabilities because they age out at 21. So it gives them that extra time.
And as a former commissioner, that was our reality. And Kate worked with me as well, and Kate oversaw the comprehensive, you know, schools and stuff like that. I can tell you this: compensatory services during this time, we actually had to advocate for that. I think that the state came together, the governor's office, the legislators came together to really identify this is a need, because we understand everyone talks about the learning loss. Well, guess what? That's exponentially greater when you have students with disability or disabled students or differently abled students, that we would call them. So I think that bill is important. And this is another way that the universities can actually step in and support, because if you're looking at a lot of the professional learning companies out there, they're all going to jump in now with the CARES Act money. They're going to come in and they're going to swoop down like vultures. This is the time where K-12 really need to look at their higher ed partners, because we're studying this. We're training teachers. We have professors that are experts in the field that are doing research. We have students that do research. This is where I think that this area here, especially when it comes to our students of disability with learning loss, this is the area where they need to rely on us. And I'm hoping that we can be able to fill that gap, because, you know, Dean Reiner and the work that your professors are doing and the research you're doing, it's incredible, especially the early childhood, the work we're doing. So I'm hoping that, and this is not a plug, but when you start to look at these professional learning opportunities, please look at the higher ed institutions within your community, in your areas, because we have the expertise to be able to assist in those areas.
Also, to touch on what Senator Sweeney was saying, and with Dr. Repollet talking about, you know, the educational loss through this pandemic, the educational loss, it's important as a parent and as parent with friends of children with autism and everything, that we don't just focus on the educational loss. There's so much additional loss through this pandemic in the form of regression, and not only in education, but in the social step forward, in the language steps forward. All of that was regressed during this pandemic and through this virtual experience we've had. And it's important that we don't just go back to what it was when schools open back up. There's additional support needed, because as I was telling Barbara, it's hard already to get those aides in these classrooms, to get the extra support for these teachers. And after this pandemic, that is going to be needed tenfold. Because I can speak personally, the level of regression as far as social interaction in my son alone is extremely difficult. And I'm working with his district, and we're trying to figure out how to get him comfortable with being back in school after not being there for a whole year. And it almost erased everything that we had done for a whole year to get him comfortable, to get him acclimated, to get things in place. So it's very important that we don't only focus on the educational loss, but also the regression of this pandemic among
And
these.
see, and that's why I indicated higher ed. Because these organizations, they're these private for-profit organizations, they're out there keying in just on education, reading, writing, arithmetic. You know, if you look at the university level, we have our therapists, we actually have a gamut. So that's why I indicated that please reach out to higher ed, because we have those supports. And it's not just the academic piece, but it's everything that goes behind. It's that comprehensive piece there. So that's why I'm pushing that school districts, as the former commissioner, please reach out to your higher ed partners to be able to talk to them, because we have the expertise. We have the professors, we have the people doing research, so we can be able to address that and then supplement that with these for-profit groups that will come in and do the targeted academic pieces, you know?
And it's important to measure the impact, right, of the pandemic and
Exactly,
that
and
loss of
that's-
classroom time for students, and collect data and understand exactly what we're dealing with. And, you know, we can be a great partner in doing that. Yeah. Barbara, you are in the planning stages to launch a pilot classroom for children with autism at Keynes Child Care and Development Center. What kind of demand are you seeing for pre-K services, autism classes at the pre-K level?
Well, I have to be honest, only being here a year, and most of that time we've been unfortunately shut down due to the pandemic. Over the past year, not so much, but I have been told that from time to time the school would receive phone calls saying, well, what services do you provide? And unfortunately, they had to say no. I think that as we develop this, you know, we will receive more and more inquiries and more individuals who would like to participate, you know, at a preschool level. One of the things that we've noted, though, is that children often don't get diagnosed until they're between the ages of 3 and 5, or sometimes later. So these preschool children, I mean, Ashley, you say you had your daughter diagnosed at 2. That's phenomenal, because most adults don't recognize what are the symptoms, what are the signals. You know, most parents who might not know, it's just, oh, they're a little different, you know, oh, they're a little difficult, but they don't know to take those steps, to take those next steps, you know, to find the treatment necessary, to find the strategies to work with their children. So that's why we're really excited to, as you said, be in the pilot stages to provide this opportunity for 2.5 to 5-year-olds to work with some specialists, some individual aides, to both have specialized services, but then also to allow them to move into integration with the regular preschool classes. It will be on an individualized basis, of course, because it will depend on the child's ability and their comfort level and where they can be successful and safe. You know, we want them to flourish. So we're really looking for an opportunity for both our teachers to engage in this experience, but also for our future teachers, for our Kean Cougars to do research and learn and participate in this from the ground floor up and really set, learn a lot and set a standard for what it means to, establish an environment for early learning for children with autism.
Ashley.
I can actually speak to how invaluable that is, to have that early diagnosis, to have that early implementation, because I was that parent that said, oh, he's just a little different, he's just a little difficult with my son. And I can see now with the comparison of my daughter getting that early diagnosis versus my son not sitting down with specialists till he was 10, 11 years old. His quality of life could have been so much better up to that point if I had, not ignored it, not just said, okay, he's just a little different, we'll work with it. If I had gotten him those supports, I feel like his advancement would be so much further than what it is. So I am very happy and I am overjoyed that you are, pushing for that early intervention, that early development, that early focus, because it makes all the difference. You can people, if you were to meet my daughter right now, you would never think she was on the spectrum. Hang around a little while, you might, but if you were to meet her, you would. And it's I give all that credit to all of the therapists and educators and her amazing teacher she has now for that.
Awesome.
Barbara, you talked about parents, not necessarily knowing what to look for, right? And I think we heard Senator Sweeney and Ken talk about discovering a new world when their children were diagnosed, right? So I think we also have to think about how are we engaging parents who don't necessarily know that they have a child that might be on the spectrum.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
That classroom integration can help with that.
And then also not welcoming the diagnosis, not welcoming that news. And really it's a difference in perspective. It's, with early diagnosis and early intervention, it's been shown that children will make phenomenal strides, from, with those early strategies. Ashley spoke about it, but it will be very exciting to engage in this process.
I think that goes back to what we talked about earlier, educating not just the children with autism, but the world around them, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's where that link comes in.
Well, and it's the other children as well. It's the experiences that the other 2.5 to 5-year-olds will have with their peers, learning that they're not, they're still capable. They just might arrive at it differently.
I think a lot of children are natural advocates, right? So
Right,
we tap
exactly.
into that and sort of cultivate that. So on the opposite end of the spectrum from the early childhood piece, we have the transition from education to workforce, which we know can be challenging for anyone. Senator Sweeney, how do you envision universities like Kean helping to build bridges and support young people in that transition?
Well, what your president said, I think the universities are higher ed is key to unlocking those potential, that potential and those possibilities. We have an ACT program. Again, I said that earlier. It's on the campus of our county college for the disabled. People look at you like you're crazy when you say that. It's not just, no, it's not crazy. It's the right attitude, listening to everyone on the stage. It's looking at the abilities and partnering with your schools with the 4 years. I think, your president is dead on, and that we have a great opportunity here to really change the world when it comes to the way we look at people with autism, people with disabilities. And I used to say to somebody, I just tell people, I said, I think some of the frustration with parents with children with autism is they know that child's, it's inside them, and it's pulling it out. It's like pulling out their potential. And our 4 years are critically, our higher education is critically important to getting our children to their greatest potential, just like normal, healthy children. We all have to be worked, there's work to be done with all of us. So again, I'm thrilled that your president's looking at it the way I see it, and not because he's my friend, but recognizing and he's compassionate because it's connected and touched his family. autism has touched everyone's family in this state, you know? So
So we had these conversations early in my position as commissioner. I think it was probably the first meeting I had with you, Senate President. And we talked about pathways, remember, on and off ramps? And we
Yep.
talked about these micro certifications or credentials. And we have a program that I can't wait to really bring you up here to see. STEPS program we currently have right now. We're taking able-bodied students and be able and give them opportunities to work on campus. So we're going to expand that for the next school year. And we're going to place them in different positions to get those skills. However, they're going to be taking courses, and those courses will lead to 15 credits, and then they will have a certificate from us, partnering with this national organization. We would say, you're certified. And I think if we take that approach, as we talk about giving individuals that self-actualization to be able to receive certificates or credits based off of their skill level, and not saying that this is the standard. Well, you cannot compare the standard, right? So we're going to create standards where our students will be able to perform and then receive certificates and credentials for that. And I think, so as we start to look at the workforce development piece, it's going to be truly looking at creating these credentials so they can go to an employer and say that I have met these standards, these minimum standards at Kean University, right? To be able to afford me the skills to get an entry-level position. And I think that's different and that's new, but a lot of that came from the conversation we had. A lot of that came from the work that you're doing down in South Jersey with the colleges. And we're just taking it, we're just gonna make it Kean, right? And really do that. So be careful, Senate President Sweeney, because I might have to ask you to put appropriations for that program. So I'm gonna leave it there for you to think about it, to work with you there. But we're excited about looking at that and creating those pathways for individuals that normally wouldn't have those pathways.
And I just want to jump on that. That's awesome. And when it comes to this community, I have no problem putting appropriations in the budget. But I just want to touch on one other thing that we did. It's called Unified Sports. And we took normal, healthy children, not children, they're college students participating in sports with people with disabilities. And on a Saturday morning at Rowan University, we have more students, you heard me, Saturday morning, pre-pandemic, that were willing to participate in playing sports with people with disabilities. And the societal benefit, the fact that we get to understand each other and we know each other, and all of a sudden we're one community, disabled and people that aren't disabled, it's awesome. So Lamont, you got my support. I'm thrilled you're here as the president, and you got my support 1,000%. I actually have to jump though. I apologize.
It's time, no problem, because we're wrapping up anyway. So
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much for
Kean
your time.
University. Thank you,
You.
guys.
You have a great day, Senate President. We'll talk to you
Take
soon.
care.
Bye.
Thank
Sure.
you.
For joining us. We are wrapping up, so I'd like to give each panelist a chance to share some closing thoughts. Ken, we'll start with you.
I wanted to piggyback on where Dr. Repollet just left off about the pathway to employment. As a parent, I'll be significantly older by the time my son reaches that stage, and it's the biggest worry I have. He's a great kid, he's lovely, he's going to do okay in school, it's fabulous, but I'd really like to be able to see these kind of pathways identified earlier for kids, so you know what to do with your child, where to give them benefits. My son's extremely strong in technical, he's extremely strong in math, but he will read a book and it's exactly what it says and nothing different. There are places for that where he can excel and be of tremendous value. How do I make sure that he's not held back because he doesn't read a book and tell you what shade of blue it is, but he can figure out math in his head, he can see patterns? How do I turn that into a pathway where he has meaningful employment and a great opportunity? And how do I get that done as a parent? And where do I go? So I would ask my boss to make sure that happens for my son.
Well, I'm going to make sure that you are part of that, building this up. Like, it's just something we're thinking about. And this is a great opportunity to talk about in action. I'm always talking about that. So that'll be an area that we're looking at. And it would be run out of the president's office, but it'll probably be looking more employee relations and HR, because we're going to start looking internally. We're going to take our STEP program, look at that, model that, and say, how can we expand that program for some of our more of a higher functioning autism students, things like, because we must not forget that some of those students are performing at a high level, right? And as you said before, how do we match the skill with the occupation? And I think once we start to identify the skills and become more skills-based, then we can start to look at where would this fit in mathematics, where would it fit in research and things of that nature. So we'll definitely continue that conversation.
Thank you, sir.
I would have to say, touching on both what you all just said and going back to when Barbara spoke on that reluctancy from the parents, that that reluctancy comes a lot from society. You know, it's frowned upon, you know, almost to have, you know, a diagnosis. You look at it as a bad thing when it's not necessarily a bad thing. And then I want to encourage companies to look into, there are neurodiversity training programs out there. There are committees and organizations offering these trainings to your workforce to teach others without the disability how to interact, how to manage. I really would love to see companies, more companies, you know, employ that training, implement that training, speak to the HR, you know, to make it big within companies and within the workforce in general, so that we can lessen that gap between, you know, now what, when they hit that age, that work age, and, you know, educate them and they lose that fear of hiring or losing out, losing money or losing anything, hiring someone with a disability, and embrace the advantages.
Absolutely. Dr. Repler?
I'm just excited that we had this opportunity to bring awareness. This is a conversation, if you look over the past couple of years, especially we talk about social justice, we're looking at students that may have been, individuals that's on the spectrum that may have been accosted, whether it's, you know, assaulted by members of the community because they didn't respond a certain way. And I think as we become educated and what exactly, how that community lives and how they respond to certain situations, then we become better as a society. And I think at Kean University, we can continue to extend this conversation, put it into action, and create places where we can become the experts and not just talking about it, but doing something about it. And so I'm very pleased to really have this panel here, distinguished panel, led by our Senate President, Steve Sweeney. But more so, I'm very pleased that these are our people, our experts. We have our dean, we have our associate VP, we have our student, we have an employee, we have a parent. So for us, I always said this as commissioner, for us, by us. So if we can create an environment for us, by us, then guess what? We start to tend to take that because we get the buy-in. Now we get the buy-in. I think it's important as we start to believe as a university, it looks into our core values. What do we value? I think everyone truly understands that. I talk about diversity, I talk about equity, because at the end of the day, it's all about that. We're one of the most diverse, if not the most diverse state in New Jersey. So we need to make sure that we as a university, we're touching all, and not just Black, brown, not just gender, but also when it comes to disabilities and things of that nature. So thank you everyone for participating. And I want to thank those that tune in to listen to us, because I think the more we talk about it, the more we can appreciate others' differences.
Absolutely. Wise words. And Dean Reiner to close us out.
We are so excited to be part of the learning community, to be part of the research community, and eventually to be leaders and seen as leaders in the research on pre-K through workforce and adult abilities for students with autism, adults with autism, you know, and children on the spectrum. And, you know, something that was said about, you know, working with parents and working with the children and their abilities and seeing where they thrive. it's also helping to the workforce, the workplace, to understand that as they hire workers, it's not necessarily all situations where someone with autism can thrive, but if you find the right situation, they will fly. They will flourish. So, thank you.
All right, we've heard so many exciting ideas today, I think, of how to take action and turn that awareness into action. So together, let's turn April into Autism Action Month. Thank you to all the panelists, and thank you to everybody who joined us today.
Thank you. Great job, everyone.
Thank you.